mentioned, who is more often than not managed or mentored or both by somebody who's very senior who tends to be statistically male. And that is a challenge, and that's a real challenge because there's an obvious power imbalance. At the same time, you're dealing with somebody who has developed their well-rooted paradigms based on what was socially acceptable in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And so, first things first, what I think has been successful in the instances that I've been involved in is where the employee, typically female, finds a mentor. And a mentor could be female, but it should not be limited to a female coworker. She or he should be looking not only to develop in their career, but also strategically for different reasons, to find somebody that has more power, more influence in the enterprise that they're involved with, because that serves a number of different objectives. Not only to help them develop as an employee and in their profession, but also to find somebody of equal power, because it is very common, at least in the circumstances that I'm involved in, that the accused tend to have significantly more power or influence within the enterprise than the HR department or than the supervisor who this employee has been told to go through, or the employee handbook describes the different paths to try to address a problem. And so that might be a suggestion that I would offer to you that I found successful. Now, speaking for all men, I think it is simpler to clone a sheep than to answer your question, because I will tell you, and the law tries to reconcile it, and it does so very hand-handedly, in that it turns on whether the provocation is welcome or not, and that is so variable. What you and I may find socially acceptable may be an intrusion on Anne's space or boundaries, not both physically but psychically. And so there's a lot there. Now, what I have found, certainly not just with the work I do, but in the team that I manage, most of the team that I manage tends to be a lot younger than me. And what they find socially acceptable is very different. I feel like I straddle generations where I'm just old enough to have heard the stories from the lawyers who I cut my teeth under, who lived and practiced in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s. And the stories, I mean, I'll be honest with you, they're exciting to hear, and it's unbelievable because it's such a different reality. At the same time, I am observing and managing individuals who are 40 and below, and I don't recognize them. And they don't recognize or resemble anything like my mentors, the people that came before me. And it is a constant challenge. And in my personal life, I find that I'm more comfortable dealing with people my age and older because I feel like at least we're on the same wavelength. And when I'm dealing with youngsters, with my team who are female or male, they understand each other. They communicate similarly, but it's different, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, just as a practitioner in this area, because it's different.
So I'm coming back to Dawn Berry in our previous panel. She kind of borrowed from her brilliance and said, we all have a responsibility to lift while we climb. And that really stayed with me, and I think that's a powerful message for this audience, particularly when you talk about the power of mentoring. So what we're in the midst of doing right now, and I don't mean just we, Pam and the guests in the room, but as a society, we're really turning to modernize how we treat each other, notwithstanding the president and this country. But we really are modernizing our workforce. We're modernizing what's okay and what's not okay. The standards are elevating. The standards, I'm just going to go back to modernize. I mean, we're just modernizing. Everything is more effective. Everything is more efficient. Everything is more modern. This isn't your grandfather's society. And I don't say that as a derogatory comment. I just say that as a data point. And so as I think about the question that I pose to the audience and I pose to the panelists, which is how can we, from a grassroots effort, how can we help sort of accelerate this modernization of society? How can we do that? And I'm really thinking about what you just said, which is the mentoring. So whether you're mentoring, if you're a millennial, you're mentoring at our level, you're mentoring at the senior levels, it's everybody coming together and recognizing that it's a whole new playbook. It's a whole new playbook. And the play options are much more modern. And so I'd love to get the feedback from the panel in terms of perhaps the takeaway, and I really respect your comment, Counselor, about the takeaway. We want a takeaway tonight. So maybe, as I think about the 70% of all Fortune 500 companies are offering formal mentoring opportunities in their companies. So maybe that's something that we as a community can do, look for those mentoring opportunities in our companies, in our church, in our communities, so that we can all start to do this in tandem and not the one-offs and make it slower.
Well, one thing I think is crucial to add, we were talking about protocol. What if it's a CEO? What if it's an investor? I have a friend here I'd like to introduce, and that's Christina DeBaca. She's the CEO of Corporate Directors Firm. Stand up so everybody can see you. This organization is all about corporate governance, and it's the board's responsibility to oversee the CEO. So I don't care how high up the perpetrator is, there are checks and balances everywhere, and it's very hard to get away with anything as you know now because of our technology and people like Mueller. But anyway, we had this discussion before, and Alexis pointed out that he has a situation. He knows a situation where the person, the harasser, is an investor. So that's just one important thing I wanted to add for sure. The other thing I want to just say is that we're not glossing over all the gradations of sexual harassment, which are many. It doesn't have to be like my situation where your job is on the line, and it can diminish a woman's ego, her career drive, her livelihood. So it's a serious issue, and it can be much more subtle than the thing that happened to me. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I wanted to, when in the first panel, it was asked how many people have been discriminated against. I think it should have been twice the number of hands raised. And I think we have this term being woke when it comes to what's going on in our country right now. And I think women need to be more woke about what's happening to them in the workplace. And I want to also point out Brad Fikes here in the front row from the San Diego Union Tribune. He's been covering these sexual harassment and gender discrimination suits in the San Diego Union Tribune. Thank you so much, Brad. And one thing that really helped me is Brad actually puts the lawsuits public on the Union Tribune, or he puts links to it. And I would suggest that you all read these lawsuits. It's not too hard to find. I did a Google search, Brad Fikes, sexual harassment, no offense.
We got your back.
But you need to know, I think I didn't have the aha until I saw, and I think Ann had sent out an article, death by 1,000 paper cuts. You're not invited to the meeting, you're not invited to the golf outing, you're asked to do the task rather than to manage it when others in your organization who don't have as much experience as you are able to manage it, and you're talked over at meetings. And I just think I think Amy Schumer is a comedian. She can be kind of crass, but she said she grew up blissfully unaware of the workplace environment. And I'm happy that my parents and my teachers told me there were no limits. But I think we all just really need to realize when we're being discriminated against, because also in this, the sexual harassment report that came out, they talked about dozens of reports that say the more diverse a workforce is, the better that it performs. And I can tell you in my field of marketing, which a lot of women excel at, it's not very respected in the life sciences. And I see life sciences suffering because of that. And so I think we all need to, take a hard look at how we're being treated in the workplace.
And let me transition into the Q&A portion so we can get more engagement from the audience, because I know this is a very interesting discussion.